Hello, everyone. We are here for our session, and it's going to be regarding the supervision and supervisor working alliance. It was initially part of one of our course papers, but then we just wanted to turn it in a conceptual research. Let me introduce myself first. I'm Gizem. I'm a first year PhD student, but kind of wrapping up my first year in UW Medicine Rehab Psych program. And my colleagues here also.
Okay, I am Tolga Zencir. I am a first year PhD student at Rehab Psych program at UW Medicine.
My name is Louis Fosu Asari, also a first year PhD student here at UW Madison. Since I wouldn't be speaking any moment from now, I just wanted to mention that my colleagues are really nervous. I am not. So I will be hiding behind them until it's my time to say something.
Okay, Louis is always like this. It's one of our valuable colleagues. And yeah, let's get started with the presentation. I just would like to quickly start with some learning objectives, what we want to cover in this session. Firstly, we will break down the key parts of the supervisor working alliance. Basically, what makes a good working relationship with supervisor and supervisees, and how these relationships can lead better outcomes in terms of different ways. And then we are hoping to look at the differences in the expectations that supervisors and supervisees often have in their relationship. And we will talk about when these differences happen, what kind of differences or mismatches or gaps in their expectations. And finally, we are hoping to wrap up all our discussion and provide you a good guidance in terms of how we can improve this relationship, this working alliance in the counseling agencies. Before we really jump into the presentation, we just would like to know a little bit about our audience. I really would love to know about your experiences in terms of supervision. Firstly, are any of you currently or before involved in, I know we have Dr. Landon here, hello. It makes me a little anxious, but anyway. Are any of you currently involved in clinical supervision? This could be a supervisor or as a supervisee. And we really would like to know about how was your experience have been so far, probably as a supervisor. I am assuming we have some supervisors. Yep, yes, please. And we have microphone. We would like to know about your experiences. Oh yeah, please, if you would like.
I think I've had 6 or so students over the last 15, 20 years or so, and they're all different, I guess is what I would say. I think that one of the most important parts has been that interview process at first, because I don't think you can do a lot of things without knowing that you're just a good match and that you have the same objectives. And I think that there can be, even, you're doing rehab counseling, but sometimes you forget to do that counseling with your supervisee. And you're just like, I gave you one job, that kind of stuff. And it can be a little intense. And so you want to have that initial conversation or that initial time to have really clear expectations, I guess is what I would say.
To set, yep,
Yeah.
absolutely. Can we kindly ask about your profession? What's your role?
Now I manage a diff grant, but before that I was a manager in the state of Oregon.
Oh, okay.
So not here, but yeah, where we have interns from 2 local universities
I see.
all
Yep.
the time.
I see. Thank you so much for your sharing. Yep. We have one more people to share via Zoom. Yep.
You want?
Just, oh, Stacy is gonna read. I think that, yeah.
I'm going to share Deirdre's response from the chat.
Mhm.
Deirdre says she is a DVR counselor with the Wisconsin DWD. She is a fully licensed as an LPC and had supervision from an individual who was also her supervisor for employment. And she also supervised an intern last year from Mount Mary for her master's program.
Okay, yeah, I think all we have as a doctoral student here in UW, we have some similar experiences too. Here in UW, we also supervise some master students when they are doing their internship. Thank you all for your sharing your experiences. It was about to know a little bit about you and also just the smooth start for the topic. I'm gonna quickly introduce some basic and base information before we really jump into our main topic. Let's talk a little bit about what the clinical supervision actually is, what we really want to have as a clinical supervision. This relationship is an ongoing relationship where supervisor supports supervisee and they learn together, but definitely there is a hierarchy between them. It's not an equal relationship, as we all know. And the goal in the supervision is definitely twofold. Firstly, supervisors support their supervisees to grow, both professionally, mostly professionally probably, and personally too. And this includes building really skills, confidence, and ethical awareness around their expertise, around their major, around their clinical practices. And secondly, by supporting counselors, supervisors help to ensure that the services provided to the clients, the services provided to the supervisees meets the organizational expectations and maintain the client's well-being and also some professional standards and ethical standards. So these clinical supervision hold two main aim. So we can say that easily it's not about checking something or it's not about doing some straightforward job. The clinical supervision means really support counselors, rehabilitation counselors to try and deliver a high quality care to their clients. And supervisory working alliance is a really the big and powerful relationship. So it means supervisors and supervisors collaborate to support supervisees' learning development. However, I think all we kind of agree that it's more that just getting something done. It's about building strong and trusting relationship where the both sides engage to that relationship and both sides contribute to that relationship. So we can always say that it's a process of influence to each other and meaning that both people affect others' attitudes, behaviors, and all the a relationship in a two ways. So there is no doubt that I think everybody probably agree here. When the alliance is strong, supervision becomes much more effective. It's just coming from, the power is just coming from this relationship. And this working alliance is one of the factors that is gonna be really facilitate the supervisees learning. So we can say that probably, even though maybe we might not have a lot of hard evidence regarding the outcomes of supervision yet, just one finding is obvious that the success of the supervision is really depends on the quality of this relationship between the stakeholders. So it's been mentioned in the literature a lot that it might be breakdown into three core elements. Firstly, as I said, all the powers coming from the quality of this relationship. And both, like all stakeholders contribute to this relationship. And as our participants mentioned, in the working alliance, in the supervision relationship, there needs to be agreement on both goals and objectives. So both the supervisor and supervisors should be clear on the expectations, should be clear on what they are gonna work on. Oops, sorry. What they are gonna work on and what they are gonna working toward throughout the way. So the shared understanding really help them to keep things focused and productive, and it's gonna be make an easier job for the supervisors and supervisees. So finally, there's an actual engagement in the work. The tasks, all the feedback, all the learning is gonna be happen in this supervision relationship is gonna be the result of active participating to this relationship, this all-powerful tool. And all these components need to be in the place to have a really alliance work well with the supervisees and at the end of the day with our clients. Some other than this, some like the qualities that I mentioned, part of the supervisory working alliance, we should definitely have some other activities, several important activities too. So to build a strong supervisory relationship, supervisory working alliance, it is not just, again, we said it's coming from the relationship, but for sure we need some certain activities and structures in this relationship. And as, again, our participants mentioned, some of the core practices really support this relationship in a really tangible way. So starting with informed consent, meaning that a clear beginning from a clear starting point from really beginning about what is going to be the supervision is, what involves, and why it matters for all the stakeholders. Or the documentation is another really important part of this working alliance. It definitely contributes a clear and consistent documentation. It's going to be helpful for a transparent process to be able to accountable. Also, it should set some procedures to evaluate, right? In the evaluation at the end of the probably sessions, it's going to be an evaluation process probably, and which is really helpful to have some structure to give a valuable and meaningful feedbacks. And also it has some contracts, putting some clear expectations, defining some roles for all the stakeholders. And finally, working together to set goals. So both supervisor and supervisee are aligned and committed to the shared outcomes, hopefully. So as we all aware, these steps create a certain structure, clarity, trust, and those are really key ingredients for the, again, relationship too. Here I am going to talk a little bit about the role of supervisory working alliance in terms of the outcomes. The main outcomes has, I think, two categories. One of them is really related to counseling outcomes, and the other slide is going to be related to specifically client outcomes. Even though we don't have, again, really, even though we have some limited research on the outcomes of the supervision, we still have some good base to be able to talk about the effectiveness of this relationship. The role of supervisory working alliance in the counseling, again, as we talked, when this alliance is strong and robust, as we discussed, it supports the supervisory development. So that means better well-being, more awareness in their work, and definitely stronger clinical skills at the end of the day. It also helps them, the research showed that it also helps them to be able to better in terms of mentally and emotionally, reducing burnout, helping counselors to build resilience so they can cope better with their demanding works, because as we all aware, it's a really demanding and sometimes might be hard to keep our like resilience. And according to most recent research, there's definitely a chain on impact. So good supervision practices is gonna be helpful to build a strong supervisory working alliance, which then leads to the job satisfaction and lower intent to quit. So in short, it's not just about, I think, learning. It's also tied directly to their performance, their better mental health, and their like career path. And lastly, here we are gonna look at some the impacts of working alliance on the client outcomes. It's not surprising that a supportive supervision environment, especially one that keeps clients' needs in focus, has been linked to better client satisfaction and stronger therapeutic outcomes at the end of the day. So how supervision is handled can actually affect the quality of care the clients receive. Even though supervisory working alliance might not directly predict every client outcome, it's particularly important for kind of new counselors. And we can, I think, easily say that supervisory working alliance helps on like both ends. It supports the counselor's development and ultimately contributes to the like better client outcomes, contributes to the better client well-being. I'm gonna stop here, and Olga is gonna talk about some factors that contribute to the differences in the supervision expectations.
It is so hard for me to talk about the supervision because we have valuable and precious supervisor like you, and then I wanna try to talk about for supervisory working alliance, and I wanna mention that expectations concept, because effective supervision needs to collaborative working and among site supervisor, university supervisor, and our supervisees. And in my sessions, it stressed that some expectations and also some gap because of the expectations. And I wanna try to express some resolutions for solve these gaps. Actually, I want to mention that university supervisor's perspective. Actually, we know university supervisors has some expectation, because these expectation relate to the structure, culture, and support provided by the training institution and the university's perspective. Actually, university supervisors' expectations, firstly, toward their own institution and program perspective. Actually, university supervisors needs to consistent supervisory structure and philosophy. And supervisors expect, university supervisors expect institutional alignment on a supervisory model and expectations, actually including a shared commitment to supervisory working alliance and its role in development, and common perspective works always. Actually, other expectation is that clarity of roles between university and site supervisors, and clarity of roles are always important for supervisor working alliance, creating it. And supervisors accept clear definition of responsibilities and assignments between university-based and site-based supervision because our ultimate goal to avoid the mixed message for our supervisors, because our supervisors' minds should be clear and definite. Actually, other expectation for university supervisors, support for culturally responsive supervision, because institutions are expected to foster ongoing training in multicultural competency and supervision ethics, and the program support the supervisors to show up their cultural humility, and also supervises cultural differences and humility easily shown up. Actually, it is important. Also, university supervisors' expectation toward the supervisees and university supervisors accept supervisees to communicate honestly, especially about challenges and mistakes, to enhance supervisees' growth and their clients' care. It is important because in supervision session, it is so open to talk about and consider clients' perspective, and also supervisees' challenges. It is so open to talk about them, and supervisors should supervisors need to honestly communicate with their supervisors. Also, another expectation, engagement appropriate to development level, because we know novice supervisees are expected to ask question and seek structure. They needs a lot, while advanced supervisees and trainees are expected to show initiative and self-reflection, and university supervisors accept the regulate based on the development level. Also, other expectation, willingness to receive and integrative feedback, because supervisors anticipate a non-defensive response to constructive feedback, because giving feedback is needs to balance for supervisees based on their development level, can create some problematic issues. Also, it is essential for maintaining a productive alliance. Also, other expectations for supervisory, university supervisors' expectation, participation in goal setting and supervision planning, because university supervisors accept supervisors to actively participate in co-creating goals for supervision and reviewing progress. It is so important. Also, university supervisors' expectation toward practical and internship setting. It is important since supervisors often receive site-based supervision in addition to universities and academic supervision. Also, expectations are also shaped in relation to external setting. Firstly, clear communication and collaboration is so important because university supervisors accept site supervisors to share evaluation information and supervision focus to avoid conflicting guidance, because collaborative working is a key to manage the supervision effectively. Also, another expectation, consistency in supervision quality. University supervisors accept that such supervisor uphold ethical standards and also support the supervisor's development goal similarly to the academic program. It is important, and it including in collaborative working. Also, other expectation, feedback on supervisor's performance. Because feedback on supervisory performance, it is important for both site supervisor and also university supervisors. Also, another expectation, understanding and support for cultural and developmental level. Supervisors hope site supervisors are sensitive to supervisor's identity and experience. And also, I will talk about the other slides. It is so common expectation for both site and university supervisors. So other and we have supervisors expectations, because supervisors anticipate that their academic supervisors will provide structured, growth-oriented, and emotional self-supervision grounded in their learning journey. And supervision process should be open to communicate easily with their supervisors, and supervision process should encourage the supervisors to maintain their supervision process. Also, supervisors' expectation toward academic program and university supervisors. Actually, clarity of roles, structure, and expectation are also important, because supervisors accept supervisors to clearly define the purpose, scope, and format of supervision. Supervisors these don't want to meet and encounter the surprising issues or assignment or responsibilities. Also, feedback, evaluation, and confidentiality is important. Also, supervisors accept them from university supervisor and university program. Also, self-supportive and non-judgmental space are key, because they accept supervision to be a secure environmental for openly discussion, clinical concerns, mistakes, and emotional response without fear of harsh judgment. And without fear of harsh judgment is provide to talk about easily in supervision session in academic program. Also, emotional safety. We know emotional safety and safe environmental in supervision sessions increase willing to disclose challenges. Also, balanced, timely, and constructive feedback is also other expectation, because supervisors want feedback that is clear, actionable, and tailored to their developmental level, because the feedback should be effective based according to supervisor's developmental level. Also, other expectation, mutual respect and collaborative relationship. This supervisors accept to be treated as emerging professionals and actively involved in setting goals rather than passively receiving information, instructions. because collaborative supervision enhance their motivation and autonomy, and the supervision process encourage them to create autonomy. Also, other acceptation, acknowledge of cultural identity, supervisors accept supervisors to consider their cultural identity and experience, and demonstrating multicultural competence and cultural humility, and cultural affirming supervision improves their satisfaction also, and working alliance. It is important. Supervisors acceptation toward to practicum setting and site supervisors, because supervisor is also from strong acceptation from them, because on-site supervisors work collaboratively, and also the supervisors spend many hours in sites. Also, they should be effective. Consistency with academic goals is critical, because they accept site supervisors to align their feedback and supervision with goal established by the academic program. The supervisors need to be clear for their responsibilities and assignments from academic and also on-site supervisors. Also, other acceptation, regular feedback and availability. It is important because they accept site supervisors to accessible and to provide timely structure feedback related to client work and case management and other issues. Regular feedback and communicate and collaborate. Meeting regularly is critical. Lack of feedback at the sites is important to grow their level. And other acceptation, understanding of their developmental level, it is important for both site and university supervisors, because both supervisors assess and evaluate their developmental level, and then they should tailor the supervision process for their supervisees. Also, it is important, and cultural respect and inclusion also common acceptation for both university supervisors and also site supervisors, because cultural perspective and multicultural perspective is a key and hinder to withdraw supervision process. Also, other acceptations, site supervisors acceptations. Site supervisors also has some acceptations from supervisors and also university supervisors and academic program. Site supervisors view the university and academic supervisors as a key partner in developing competent and ethical considerations and practices for supervisees development and sustain the effective clinical supervision process. Also, site supervisors acceptations for academic program and university supervisors. The first acceptations, we can say, clear communication and coordination. As I said, it is important because site supervisors accept timely, transparent communication with academic supervisors about student goals, supervision standard, and evaluation criteria. Because academia follow the recent developmental changes and updates in some supervision process. Also, collaborative learning process should be worked. It is important. Lack of the coordination between university and sites can create problematic issues for both them and also supervisees. It is important. Also, alignment of supervision goals is another acceptation. Site supervisors accept the academic program to articulate clear, constant learning goals that reflect supervisees developmental level based on sites opportunity and requirements. It is important. Also, other acceptations supporting managing difficult situation, because site supervisors accept university supervisors to be available when issues arise with supervisors. For example, ethical concern, performance challenges, and it is important. They value responsive guidance and joint problem solving. It is important. Site supervisors should be more confident when the academic program share responsibility for managing supervisors' challenges. It is important. Site supervisors' expectations toward supervisees. Site supervisors are also maintain the direct acceptation for the supervisees because they spend many times and hours with the supervisees. Also, they have several acceptations. Firstly, professional conduct and accountability. It is important because supervisors are accepted to behave professionally and address to ethical guideline and take responsibility for their clinic work and learning process. Also, academic program is important for creating a professional identity for supervisees. Also, other acceptation, openness to feedback and growth. Supervisees should demonstrate humility and ask questions and active learning process and should want to feedback and also be active in learning process. And other acceptation, initiative and clinical readiness. Supervisors value supervisors who show initiative, prepare for supervision meetings, and show readiness to learn from real-world practice. Also, proactive supervisors signal developmental maturity and investment, also important. And other acceptation, cultural sensitivity and ethical awareness. Students are accepted to show cultural humility, reflect on their biases, and seek support when navigating diverse client needs. Cultural awareness is also important to a safe and productive supervisory alliance, and it is important. Also, we have some acceptation, and then also we can see acceptation gaps in the creating supervisory working alliance. For example, role clarity. Role clarity is a mismatching between how roles and responsibility are understood across triadic supervision among academic sites, academic supervisor, site supervisor, and supervisee. Unclear roles and ambitious expectations increase supervisor's stress and reduce alliance strength, and it is a gap. Other thing is feedback style and frequency gap is also mismatching between supervisor's needs for consistent and balanced feedback versus site supervisors practical constraint or evaluation focused feedback. Supervisors often accept formative, timely, and strengths-based feedback, and site supervisors can provide only performance-oriented or brief feedback due to time constraints, and we can see some problematic points in the supervision process, and as a result of them, the supervisors can feel unsupported or overly criticized, also decreasing engagement to supervision process. Another gap can be cultural competence and identity attunement. Is mismatching supervisors' expectations for cultural responsiveness and versus site supervisors' comfort and preparedness to address identity issues can be. Also, supervisors want their cultural, gender, and also personal identity acknowledged and respected. But site supervisor may avoid identity-related topics and unintentionally commitment, microaggression also can be difficult, problematic. Also, other gap can be related to developmental readiness. It is mismatching between site supervisor expectations of independent performance and supervisors' need for more structure and guidance. And site supervisor can assume supervisors are more clinical ready than they are now. As a result of that, the misjudgment of supervisor's competence, supervisor can feel overwhelmed or incompetent. Yeah. Also, other gap can be related to communication and coordination. Lack of coordination between university and sites can create a gap and can be problematic. And also, other sites has some resolution in creating supervisory working alliance for role clarity gap. Resolution can be role induction, also supervision contracts strategies can solve this problem, this gap, because early supervision orientation can clarify supervisors and supervisors' role, evaluation criteria and goals, and supervision contracts is important to hinder the acceptation gaps. Also, initial meetings also is a key. It is important because it provides to discuss dual roles and can create an effective triadic supervision. Also, other gap feedback style and frequency gap, and the resolution can be to build a bidirectional feedback process. Supervisor give and receive the feedback and collaborate each other. Also use regular check-in to assess satisfaction with supervision. Another solution can be train supervisor, provide timely, specific, and strength-based feedback. And effective culture can be a key to manage this gap. Also, other acceptation, cultural competency, and identity attunement, cultural humility practice, both university and academic program, and also sites supervisors work collaboratively. Also, our ethics codes provides and enhance our cultural multi perspective, and we can use them. Also, other acceptation gaps, developmental readiness. For this gap, developmentally appropriate supervision is a key. Tailored supervision style based on the supervisor's developmental level can be critical because begin with more structure and gradually foster autonomy can be important, and assess the supervisor's developmental level prior to supervision process. It is important, and goal checklist, for example, and also reflection journals each week, and it can create a opportunity to self-assessment for supervisors. And communication and coordination, it's also important, and also trading collaboration is a key to facilitate regular communication between university and site supervisors, and shared documents, and we can use the technology for create this solution, and trading supervision meetings also, it is important. Then, yep. I'm done, and then also we will process.
Okay, before I get into our next section, I crave your indulgence, and I would want to know whether everyone here had always loved supervision. Okay, I think that's actually a good answer. Yeah. I didn't see that. Yeah, Dr. Vermonk. Well, I would be very honest. Not that I didn't like supervision, but before I engaged with the process itself, I had a lot of questions, especially, and I would share with you as an international student, it was a bit overwhelming, even with trying to find the ideal time to even meet your supervisor every week, especially during our master's program was a lot. Interestingly, now it's my first year as a PhD student here, and I get to organize these with other master's students. And sometimes I wonder how they feel that I get to do what was done to me to them. So I do appreciate that, especially the chuckling and the smiling and the laughing. I did appreciate that, and that's good enough for me. So I get to do the easy part with this presentation because my part is almost like a summary of everything we've been talking about. So before I introduce that fun part, hopefully, I hope that after our presentation today, each and every one of us would go back to our various destinations, remembering 5 boxes. So what was this presentation about? Okay, those guys talked about 5 boxes, and those 5 boxes are represented here. Okay, so you're talking about supervisory working alliance, and we thought about this as a framework or as a model. We've talked about so many things, and even with that, that's a lot of information. But how does all this make sense? how do we actually realize those positive outcomes from the various supervisory relationships that we have? And I would like to think that some of these relationships could even be extended, regardless of the position that you find yourself in. As a leader, irrespective of the setting, you get to do some sort of supervision some way, somehow. So we could actually extend this to whichever setting we find ourselves in, and not even in a very strict supervisee relationship. So for the first box, we are thinking of supervisor variables. And by that, you are thinking of our personalities, the supervisor's competence, and most importantly, I don't want us to only consider competence, but to think about cultural humility. It's one thing to know that, okay, there are so many cultures in the world, but it's another thing to have that disposition that I really want to know. There are so many cultures, but I really want to know about other cultures. So we are not only highlighting cultural competence as significant here, but we are also highlighting cultural humility as a significant disposition to have as a supervisor. And then your supervision style. I personally value and appreciate, and I hope everyone adapts it. I think everyone should be an autocratic supervisor. Well, yeah, be autocratic. Tell your supervisees what to do and don't listen to any of them. Just kidding. But I think there isn't a one size fits all with this. There are several supervisory styles. However, even though there could be so many good ones, I would like to think that some are definitely not good. And being an autocratic leader or supervisor isn't the best. In terms of that, we can also consider the numerous supervision models that we have. Now, box number 2, supervisee variables. Again, over there, we would have to consider the person's personality. Again, being here, who is this guy Louis? And who is my supervisor? And in terms of, I believe there's something called certain personalities clashing. This is real. So we have to know our personalities, we have to know our challenges, we have to know our strengths, we have to know our limitations in the supervisory working alliance. And then developmental level, another important one. My appreciation of supervision grew as I advanced in my academic journey. As a first-year master's student, it was different. To be very honest, and I hope nobody tells my supervisor at the many supervisors I had at Idaho State University, but some of those weekly supervisions were like, I get to see them again. Yeah, but now I really enjoy it. And the truth is, at some point in school, I was looking forward to some of these weekly supervision meetings. So I hope that all other students could also journey and have that kind of experience that I had. So the student developmental level is key over here, and both supervisors and supervisees would have to be very conscious, not only aware, they would have to be conscious of that. Another one is motivation. How motivated am I to even sit in the room? And I guess generally we understand motivation could be either extrinsic, I'm there because the school wants me to be there, I'm there because I want to get all these grades, or I'm there because I love supervision, and that could be intrinsic. However, even if students don't want to do it, I guess the challenge is for supervisors to develop that utility driven, and we could use questions like, how do you think this could be significant for you, or how do you think this could be helpful for you in your future career? Now, the last item over there is supervisee disclosure and self-disclosure, and that is you wouldn't want to be in supervision and lock yourself in a room, and you wouldn't want your supervisor to know anything about you and just sit there because and I'm sorry, I'm going to mention one of my professors' names. You are there because Dr. Baumann says you should be there. Please don't do that. As much as possible, be willing to disclose, be willing to share, because your supervisors are there for you. The third box is to be mindful of organizational variables. I've had experiences where supervisees are questioning why we do certain things in supervision. The truth is, yes, the experience is about you, but it's not always about you only. It's about you, it's about your clients, it's about UW-Madison, it's about the sites that you're working at. And so you would have to consider all these things, and how to maintain that balance is what we are talking about here. So organizational variables are equally important as supervisor variables, as supervisee variables, and organizational variables. Kayla, Stacy wants me out of here, so she's reminding me. Okay, then the fourth box is expectations. Expectations is where all these things come together. What does my supervisor expect? What do I expect from this experience? And what does UW-Madison, what does the site expect of me? What does where I'm working at expect of me? Now, the final one, the fifth box would be to realize positive outcomes. Ideally, that's what we want. But in reality, anything could happen. Now, if some of these are not realized, that's why we have those beautiful bi-directional lines over there. There is always a chance to reassess, go back, and do certain things right. So those arrows over there there is intentionality behind why they are bi-directional. So there is always a chance to go back, reassess, and evaluate. Now, I spent a lot of time with this one because yes, we are talking about how to evaluate. So for every box, for every variable, these are some evaluative tools or assessment tools that we could use to assess them. I wouldn't spend a lot of time with that because Kayla doesn't, no, Stacy doesn't want me here. Okay, now I want to end oh, sorry, bear with me. I do have like 20 more slides, bear with me. I'll finish quickly. So these are some strategies that we could be very intentional about and adapt. The first one is building rapport and trust. I would want to highlight that it's almost like a cliche, everybody knows it, but as to how we are very intentional about it is another question. Please be genuine with the relationships that you build. Don't be in there because Dr. Baumann says you should be there. Don't be in there because the organization says you should be there. Be there because you want to. Be there because you desire to help your students develop. Establish clear expectations. Toga has talked a lot about that. And then be open. Be open. In my culture, it's said that sometimes you can speak to wise people using proverbs and all that. The truth is, it doesn't always work that way. Sometimes you have to be very clear. Sometimes you have to be very direct, but respectful. The fourth, employ feedback and evaluative tools. Intentionally, be very intentional and be open. Promote professional growth. And then continuous learning and supervision training, including being here, listening to me, wanting to punch me because I don't have a lot of time. Now, yeah, as I promised, please bear with me, 10 more slides. And then on that note, I want to say thank you to everyone for coming. I had to rush through, but I hope every other thing, everything I've shared with you is going to be helpful in whatever setting that you find yourself in. Oh, yeah, sorry. Okay, so now I know it's not only Stacy who wants me out of here. Gizam is also part. So thank you all for coming, and